everybody, and we are back for our 9th episode of Stolen Homes. And hello, Baba.
Hello, Olympia.
Hi.
Hello, everybody.
So we're going to get right into it. Today we're going to talk about the visit that Baba had going to Turkey, actually, in 2001. Yep.
May of 2001.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about that and kind of that experience of going to Turkey, knowing that we were in Cyprus. We were living in Cyprus at the time, and how Yaya felt too is a big thing because I think she was not ready for that. Anyway, so we're going to jump right in. So, Baba, tell us how you got to Turkey and why.
I was invited by a friend, a professor from Canada, who is at the, he just retired from the, it was Nazarene College, they called it at that time. Today they call it Ambrose University of Calgary in Canada. And he, my friend Charles Neil Girkin is his name, he does these trips, educational trips around the world, mostly to, mainly to Middle East countries, and he tries to find the roots of Christianity and all kinds of things. So the trip to Turkey was a journey following in the steps of St. Paul.
Oh, okay.
Starting in Antioch and then going through the entire, well, most of the places, all the places that St. Paul went to, and many places that he sent letters to, the 7 churches of the Book of Revelation, Patmos, and then we ended up north into Constantinople, and visited the Hagia Sophia, took a boat ride on the Bosporus, etc., etc. It was very, very one of the most amazing trips I took.
How long was that trip, though?
17 days.
Oh, wow. Okay.
17 days, yeah. It was the longest I was away from the family, so
yeah,
that was
that was a long trip. Yeah.
Yeah, and this was in 2001. We were still living in Cyprus. It was right before we left.
Yeah.
It was in May before we left. We left in July, but this was in May. So it was a very, very good trip in so many different ways, and it was good for me in so many different ways, emotionally, spiritually, and academically too, and visiting those amazing places. You know, the thing that I verified or realized at some point in a very big way was how Greek Turkey is. Okay, Turkey is what is Turkey today used to be called Megali Hellas, the Greater Greece.
I didn't know that.
Because there were hundreds of colonies of the Greeks along the coast and in the inland too. There were Greek-speaking Greek colonies from before Alexander the Great. And Alexander the Great went through that and kind of subjugated everybody, told them everybody to be under himself. And we went to one of the cities that refused to accept his rule as the emperor, as a great king, which, of course, everything is in ruins today.
Yeah.
And of course, everywhere, and then all of that land became Christian. So there are ancient ruins side by side with Christian churches, ruins of Christian churches today.
Wow.
And in some places, like the more recently destroyed cities where Greek-speaking Christians were living, primarily the coast, where they were expelled in 1922.
Okay.
Those still have the names of the Greek people on the homes, and the churches are destroyed, of course.
Yeah.
And it was a very moving time for me. It was really emotional, very emotional, and kind of my heart was broken going through. But at the same time, I was faced with the Turkish people. I was encountering them every day.
Yeah.
And most of the time, they were very kind. I say 99% of the time were very kind and very polite and very hospitable. And in Hierapolis, I remember we arrived at the hotel late in the evening, and they put a table for us. We're about 32 people,
And you
35
were
people.
dressed, you're a priest, obviously. You
I
were
was
dressed
dressed like a
as a
priest, yeah,
priest.
yeah,
Yeah, that whole time, that
yeah.
whole trip. Yeah.
And the Turkish the chefs came out of the kitchen with Greek flags and
Aw.
and they put them on my table, next to the Turkish flag that they had.
Aw.
So it was very interesting in those ways, kind of very, very beautiful encounters with some kind people. But before we went, that was the most interesting thing that happened. Is before we went, that when my mother found out that I was planning to take this trip,
Yeah.
she was very upset. She was scared.
Yeah.
She says, "No, they're gonna kill you. You're gonna die."
Yeah. She really thought they were going to hurt you.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I was very concerned too, because I wanted to make sure that they will accept a Greek priest, a Greek-looking priest,
Exactly.
that they haven't seen probably, because there are some places like Constantinople, for example. For a long time, the Turkish government forbade the priests to wear their cassocks and look like priests.
Mm.
Okay, and they forbade all of the religious leaders to do that.
Okay.
Okay, including the Muslims. So this is Ataturk's laws that of making the Turkish society secular, and in forbidding one, he had to forbid all of them. So he kind of removed the rights from clergy to wear clergy clothing in public. So that was. So my mother was very concerned, and I checked with the agency. I asked the university to check with the agency that was hosting us and taking us around if that would be a problem, and they guaranteed for me that there would be no problem. There was always a Turkish guide with us, and our plan was, our itinerary was kind of officially approved by the authorities. I don't know exactly what it was necessary, but it was and so I was comfortable at that point that there was no danger, but my mother was very scared. So then I had to go get permission from the Archbishop at the time. Archbishop Chrysostom was the first to get permission to leave. And
to leave Cyprus so you could go, right? Yeah.
And take permission to be absent. And he looked at me and he says, "Turkey? What are you going to do in Turkey?" So I explained to him the trip, and he was very gracious. Actually, he even gave me money for my expenses and kind of
that was nice.
Helped me out in that way. And then he says, "Okay, one thing, it's okay for you to go, but you have to wear your galimafki, the priestly hat, everywhere you go."
Okay.
And I said, "Okay." So I had my galimafki with
Deal.
me. I wore it most of the time, not every day, but I wore it most of the time. I had it in the bus with me all the time.
Oh.
It was very interesting.
Yeah. How did you feel when you were there? I mean, aside from being kind of heartbroken over some of the things that you witnessed, but did you ever have any thoughts about what happened in Cyprus while you were there? Did that ever
Every single day.
Yeah.
Every single day, the thought of what had happened to us in Cyprus was going through my mind, especially seeing the destroyed towns, abandoned towns that were abandoned in 1922 when the exchange of population happened, and even before that, the Turks destroyed some of the cities like Smyrna, for example. I went up to the castle of Smyrna during that visit, and my heart cried, and Charles asked me to sing the song of Smyrna Mana Gegede.
I know that song. Yeah.
Smyrna is being burned.
I would have cried if you sang that.
There were tears in my eyes for that.
Yeah.
There was a wonderful encounter in Antioch, ancient Antioch, called Antakya today. There's still a Christian community, a very small Christian community. Antakya was taken by the Turks in 1939, if I'm not mistaken, and added to Turkey, taken from Syria, and the Christians fled, including the Patriarchate of Antioch that was there at the time. They left and went to other places, and the Patriarchate went actually to the capital of Syria.
Okay.
and establish itself there since then. And they built a huge patriarchate building, and they're there. But there's still a church, and the Church of St. Peter and Paul, an ancient church, a very old church, built with stone, and there's a small community of maybe 500 souls. Antioch had more than 50,000 Christians, and now it has less than 500.
Oh, wow.
The priest was very old, probably he looked very old. He was probably in his mid-80s at the time, and he was hardly able to serve the liturgy. And the chanters were, most of them, quite old. But the interesting thing for me in Antioch, I was there for a Sunday morning liturgy on the Sunday of Thomas, and it was the Eastern period, Easter period, the celebration of Pascha, Sunday of Thomas, right after Pascha, and they were singing the hymns of Pascha during the Orthros, and they knew them in Greek.
Oh, wow.
So they sang them in Greek, and then they would sing them in Turkish.
Can you explain what Pascha is really quick for the people who don't know what Pascha is?
The celebration of the resurrection of Christ, Easter, as we call it in the West.
Yeah.
So this is the Paschal season, as we call it, which we sing all these resurrection hymns that we only sing during that period.
Yeah.
And these older men, they could sing in Arabic because they were under Syria and they became Arabicized.
Yeah.
But they could also sing in Greek from Turkish characters. And then they would sing in Turkish as well.
Wow.
And then they read the Epistle reading and the Gospel reading both in Arabic as well as Turkish.
Okay.
Wow. And they were very welcoming to me when they saw me coming in. They had no idea I was coming in. They didn't know who I was. It was probably the first time they saw an Orthodox priest walk into their courtyard of the church. And this is the ancient site of where Peter and Paul confronted each other, or Paul confronted Peter actually for his decisiveness with regard to circumcision, and so there's a church dedicated to Peter and Paul there.
That's so interesting.
So this goes back 2,000 years, you know. I mean,
centuries.
Christianity began in Antioch.
In Antioch, yeah.
The name Christian was given to the Christians, to the followers of Jesus, in Antioch. And Antioch was the center from where the expeditions, the missionaries, started, and so Peter was there for the longest time, and Paul started from there, and he was sent by the apostles to spread the gospel to the Gentiles.
Didn't he come to Cyprus too, St. Paul?
His first trip was from Antioch to Cyprus.
That's cool.
So Antioch is a very important city in that sense, and because the apostles could not stay in Jerusalem because the Jews were persecuting them in Jerusalem, so they left and made Antioch the center of their missionary activity.
Wow.
So St. Paul is sent out from Antioch to do his journeys, and the first one was to Cyprus.
Wow.
So we went to the port where he left for Cyprus.
Oh my gosh.
Which is quite far from Antioch itself. It's down by the sea. Of course, the boundaries have shifted. There's more land now because the rivers have brought soil and kind of filled the sea. So there's a lot of land that was created. Probably 4 miles of land.
Wow.
That was created, 2 to 4 miles of land, depending on where you are, from the rivers that bring the soil from the mountains. And anyway, so Antioch was a moving moment for me, meeting a Christian community, an Orthodox Christian community, worshiping today. I attended the Orthros and the liturgy on a Sunday morning, and they were chanting in Arabic, Turkish, and Greek, and I was amazed. I sang with them. They perfect. I mean, as if we grew up together.
Aww.
It was so close.
Wow.
I mean,
that's
I felt
really
so
powerful.
Close to them,
Yeah. That's
and
so
then
cool.
we went out to the square of the city, waiting for the museum to open up, and a group of young men, teenagers, about 15, 16 years old, they came out. They saw me as a priest. They came up to me and they asked for my blessing. They were all Christian kids.
Oh wow.
So I wanted to tell them, why weren't weren't you in church this morning? But,
No.
but then you said,
Oh my gosh. That's funny.
but that was so moving. I mean, the students that were with the group and the other people that were with the group, they were amazed to see these young kids approach me and ask for a blessing, and I would bless them as a priest. They kissed my hand.
Yeah.
And everybody was looking and saying, "What's going on here?"
You see that there. You see it, yeah. In Cyprus too.
Yeah, of course. But in Antioch, in
right,
Turkey,
right, in Turkey.
Turkey, yeah.
Yeah.
It was amazing for me.
That is so cool.
That never happened again in Turkey, but that was the beginning of that was the beginning of the trip in a way. It was that's where we started.
That's awesome. So it started you off well.
Yeah.
Wow. And you said that you had visited Hagia Sophia too.
Yes, I visited Hagia Sophia twice during this trip. The first time when I arrived in Turkey, I arrived in Constantinople and I waited for the group to come for overnight. So for 2 days maybe, I don't remember how I arranged it. Okay. And I went and visited the Patriarchate of Constantinople. And then I took a taxi. They arranged a taxi for me from there. And I went to Hagia Sophia. I didn't go inside this time. Okay. But I walked outside and I took pictures.
Must have been amazing.
And then, it was very beautiful and very moving again. Kind of, my heart was kind of beating throughout the whole thing. Yeah. And then the group came the next day. And then we flew to south and west and outside of Antioch. Okay. And then we took a bus, and the bus took us everywhere else. Yeah, except when we went to Patmos, we took a boat from Ephesus, from the Ephesus area, and went across to Patmos for, I think, 2 nights maybe, and then came back to Turkey, and then completed the trip going north all the way to Constantinople. So the interesting thing for being in Turkey and the guide that we had on the bus, he was a young man, maybe in his early 30s, and he was willing to talk about anything, and I had a lot of conversations with him. Okay. Of course, he was taking a very Turkish hard line about all kinds of things, but I had him also. In a way, questioned him on a very honest basis, and I said to him, "You were alive when the invasion happened, or I think he might have been. Yeah, I don't remember. He was probably a small child. But I said, how did the Turkish government convince the Turkish people that it was okay for them to invade and get their support?" And the interesting thing he said is that there was weeks of basically propaganda through the TV of showing bad things that the Cypriots have done to the Turkish Cypriots, the Greek Cypriots, the Turkish Cypriots in the past, and they repeated it every day, that they aroused the anger and the fear of the Turkish people, that the Greek Cypriots are violent and they will do worse things to the Turkish Cypriots than the things that happened in the past. Because there were skirmishes among the Greeks and the Turks in Cyprus
for a long time.
For the previous 14 years, or at least 10 years, from 1964 on, and that animosity was exploited by the Turkish government. In
so they would take clips of like the side where the Cypriots were. Yeah. On the attack or defense or whatever.
They have pictures that would show bad things that the Greek Cypriots had done. And they would show them over and over again until they convinced everybody this is the right thing to do, and then they invaded. And they had the support.
So they just avoided showing the Turkish shots. They just showed the Cypriot.
Yeah, they didn't show anything the Turks did.
Oh, wow.
To the Greeks.
Just the one side.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It was a propaganda. And he basically explained that to me and admitted to it that he... that this is the way that they did it, to convince.
I mean, Germany kind of did the same thing too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's really powerful to use propaganda against your own people, or to use it to convince your people
they need to kill somebody else.
Yeah. Wow.
So that was a big thing for me.
Was that like privately?
No, he was talking about it in the bus.
Oh, wow. So in front of everybody, he kind of had that conversation with you. Yeah. Okay.
And we had a lot of conversations and kind of some arguments because he was taking some positions, especially about the people that were expelled in 1922, the millions of people. And I even mentioned the Armenians and things like that he would not accept.
He wouldn't touch that, yeah.
He wouldn't touch that. He wouldn't accept any of that. And of course, he never admitted that they did anything bad. But everywhere we went, there were ruins. There were destroyed churches and destroyed homes.
That he was showing you.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow. Oh my goodness. Okay.
He would never admit that they did anything wrong. But he was taking us to all the things that they were destroyed. So
wow. Okay. That's interesting.
Yeah. There was one church, a huge church it was built from the time of Justinian in Philadelphia, which is mentioned in the Book of Revelation. It's one of the main churches.
Okay.
It's the Book of Revelation. Yeah, I might mention the Book of Acts as well. Anyway, so we went to that, and the only thing left, okay, in the entire town, well, the only Christian thing that we saw was this huge cathedral built with stone.
Okay.
And the only part of it is standing is the apse of the over the holy table,
Okay.
the
Okay.
altar.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And the rest of it is ruins.
Mm-hmm.
And they built homes. And in the place where the altar was, there is a Turkish family living now.
Okay? Wow.
They kind of built their home into the ruins, and they live right over where the altar used to be. Yeah.
What?
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Things like that. I mean, it was amazing. I mean, the things that we saw just makes your hair stand up, you know.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cities, Pergamon was an amazing place again. Pergamon was the homes of the Greek Christians who left in 1922. They're still there. The church has collapsed, and there is an older church also collapsed, which is from the time of Justinian again, a beautiful cathedral. Only the apse is left. And Patriarch Bartholomew had recently done a liturgy in the ruins.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah. And but the neighborhood where the Christians used to live, well, it was a totally Christian city, actually. There were hardly any Turks. But they expelled them all, and we walked through the streets, and the names of the people who own these homes are still inscribed on the homes.
Oh, wow.
The full Greek names, in Greek.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Some of the homes were renovated and there are Turkish families living in them. Some of them are still in ruins and nobody's
in them. Yeah.
But Pergamon was a moving experience too because of the ancient history with the Temple of Asclepios and the Acropolis of Pergamon, it was basically taken by the Germans and brought and placed in a museum in Germany.
Wow. Okay.
Everybody has taken.
Yeah, everybody. Yeah. Yeah.
So the Germans have most of the Acropolis of Pergamon. And I learned a lot. I learned a lot about ancient Greek history. I learned a lot about Christianity. In the process, we went to all kinds of places. Ephesus was amazing. We went to the tomb of St. John the Evangelist on the Acropolis of Ephesus. And we have his Dormition tomorrow on Saturday. So I was thinking about that recently.
Oh, wow.
Because I venerated the tomb of St. John the Evangelist.
That's so
Ephesus,
cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
There was a huge cathedral built by Justinian again. That's now today's ruins. There are I think there's at least one ancient baptistry. So I took a lot of pictures of these things which you can't find anywhere else, like the baptistries, for example.
Yeah.
The way they do them in the ground and they're crosswise.
Well, I have to see them. I don't think I ever got to see them.
Yeah. So I will,
Are those areas the areas that you visited, like where you were able to venerate a saint, which is a pretty big deal? Are they owned by the Turkish government, those areas? Or does the Orthodox Church have any control of that at all, or no?
The Orthodox Church has no control on anything because the Turks have taken everything from the church.
Okay.
Because there are no Christian populations anymore. So who owns it is, I don't know exactly what the situation is.
Okay.
But in Turkey, the Turkish government has taken properties from Constantinople, from the Patriarchate, from the church. They have taken 80% of their property in the last 50, 60 years. They've ripped them off completely. They have this law that you if you have a piece of property and you don't preserve it, okay, the government takes it. But in order to do any preservation, any repairs on a building, you need a permit from the government. So the church applies for permits to repair the buildings, and the government doesn't give it.
They
And then,
deny the.
yeah, then after a period of time,
They say, "Oh, it's been
confiscate it.
neglected, so it's ours
Yeah,
now."
they confiscate it. Yeah,
That's very
that's the
tricky.
law in Turkey, and it's becoming stricter now
Wow.
because they're. Anyway, we'll talk about the
Yeah.
situation today.
Yeah.
But these are things I discovered over time as I looked into this more and more. That the Turkish government is actually has been systematically taking away from the church everything that was left to them, as the population was also left because the Christians in Constantinople were over 100,000 in 1955, and there are probably around 2,000 today.
Wow.
Okay, so
that's a pretty big difference.
They forced them out.
Yeah.
Pogrom after pogrom. They forced them out and took their shops. They took their homes. The only things that were left were the things that belonged to the church.
Okay.
So there were properties, there were schools, there were orphanages, there were all kinds of things. And the Turkish government keeps taking them away systematically, using this law of repairing and lack of repairs or neglect, which they are basically faking it, in a way. They're kind of tricking them to.
Yeah.
And they confiscate their property. So that's another. So they have been condemned by the European Court about this because the archons in America have filed lawsuits with the European Court against Turkey about these confiscated properties. And the court found out that they had proof that the properties were taken away illegally.
Wow.
In a way, by tricking them this way. And the Turkish government has been condemned and asked to give back the properties. This was like 4 or 5 years ago.
Okay.
And they have not given anything back
I was
yet.
going to say, I don't think anything has changed since then.
Yeah, because they really have no reason to listen to the court. Nothing can happen to them. The court cannot send the police and force them to do anything. The European Court has no power unless the government of that country wants to abide by the rules. But Turkey doesn't care, so they're not going to abide by anything.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So some things became more clear about the policies of Turkey, but I love the people of Turkey, I have to say. I mean, they were very kind, and wherever you went, I mean, I looked at them and they looked like us. I mean, a lot of them. I mean, I saw somebody in a restaurant at some point because I said, "This looks like my brother." He looked so much like Theo Theodore.
Yeah. Wow.
And other places too. I mean, there were some that looked more like Asian. They had Asian characteristics or those Turkish characteristics with bent noses and things like that.
Right.
But most of them look like us, and there is good reason for that. I think that the Turkish people are mixed people. They're what they did during the 400 years with the Greeks. They took their children and they took the girls and brought them to the harems.
Yeah.
And they made them their wives, and they had children with them. They took the boys and made the Janissary force. And when those kids eventually might have gotten married, they had children. They could have married Turkish, ethnically Turkish women, and they had children. So I think that probably half the Turkish people, even more of them, would be half Greek.
Yeah.
Blood-wise,
yeah.
race-wise, but DNA-wise. But the people in Greece are not mixed like that. They're more, you go to Peloponnesus and they're 97% Greek.
Right. Yeah.
So it's the mixture happened in what Turkey is today.
In the Turkish area, it is.
Because the Muslims would take the girls and marry them and make them Muslims, but the Christians will not take Muslims and make them their wives.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's why we probably all look alike.
Yeah. So they look like us in so many different ways. I mean, there's
some differences and stuff.
There's some differences because there's isolation too. But But a lot of them looked like us, and they were very kind everywhere I went. There was nobody who spoke to me in a bad way.
That's good.
And I always looked like a priest. I was always wearing the priestly clothes.
Yeah.
And people would probably stare at me, but then they would look away. And kind of, yeah.
Nobody like confronted you or said anything to
No,
you?
no, nothing, nothing.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I don't know how it would be today if I went to Turkey. So
I
that may
don't
be
know.
a
That
good
was back in
question.
2001, so I don't know what would happen now. But
Yeah.
yeah.
I may go back someday, so we'll see.
Maybe. I would like
And
to
test
go.
it and see how it
Right,
works.
yeah. Not by yourself though.
Not by
Go
myself.
with a group.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Well, it would be very cool to go and to see some of those places if we're still allowed to go see those places if they're still public. I mean, I don't know what's different now compared to 2001, but
Uh,
other than what happened to Hagia Sophia, that was a big thing, but
Hagia Sophia was converted to a mosque after being a museum since 1931,
Mhm.
33 or whatever. It was, of course, a mosque between 1453 and 1933. Then it became a museum under Ataturk, who wanted to use it as a heritage site, and it was declared a World Heritage Site protected by
Mm.
the World Organization. And of course, they supplied Turkey with lots of money to fix it and repair it and preserve it. And now they turned into mosque.
Yeah.
And they also turned into mosque another church that was a museum since that time, the Church of Hora, dedicated to Christ.
Where is that one?
That's in Constantinople as well.
Okay.
And they're turning other places, churches in other places, into mosques that were not being used as mosques since
I didn't know
Ataturk,
that.
since the 1930s. So it's a government plan and the government policy to do this now that the current president Erdogan is applying and challenging everybody and challenging the world and challenging Greece and challenging Cyprus and challenging the United States and the European Union. He's challenging everybody. So I'm not sure where this will end, but
If it will end. I don't know.
yeah, we'll
I don't
see.
know.
I suspect that if he continues like this is like a road to destruction for him and for the country, for his country. So I don't want to go into prophecies now. There are plenty of prophecies about the destruction of Turkey at some point, but I'm not going to go into that
No.
because I don't know. I'm
We
not
don't
sure.
really know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, but you did get to see Hagia Sophia at that
I
time.
got to get into Hagia Sophia. We spent several hours. I brought a lot of pictures back.
Hmm.
Um,
And it was a museum at that time,
it was
yes?
a museum at the time, yeah.
Hmm.
And I paid $17 to get in.
Really?
17 US
Well, I
dollars.
guess because it was a museum, they could charge
Yeah,
somebody
yeah.
to go in.
They generate a lot of money from it. So I'm not sure what
Interesting.
what they're doing by
Because,
turning to mosque.
yeah, I don't think they are charging anything for
No, they're
visitors
not.
if they want
No.
to. But it is a mosque where Muslims can worship now.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. That's interesting. I don't know.
So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. So when you came back to Cyprus after you visited Turkey, unless you have another specific story from Turkey, but when you came back and visited, how was it to come back to Cyprus and talk to Yaya? What did you tell Yaya? Because she was scared you were going to be hurt, but
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the most difficult part was that for a few days I could not call from where I was because I was in remote places. I even had my cell phone from Cyprus
Really?
with me, and I tried to call directly.
And you
I could
couldn't?
get a signal actually from Cyprus because Cyprus is only 40 miles away.
Wow,
But it could,
okay.
and I tried to call a couple of times, and I couldn't sustain the signal, so it
Oh,
failed.
wow.
So finally, when I was able to call, I told them I was safe, I was good.
Yeah.
So they were not worried about too much, but I think my mother was praying all along 17 days for my safety, and maybe that helped a lot in
Yeah.
in the way things developed. So
Maybe. Wow. So did you find any peace or anything through that process, or do you think that came on later in your life, or how was it processing that? Because now you went to both countries. You're in Cyprus and you went to Turkey. So
yeah,
you were faced with a lot.
yeah. At this point, 2001, I had not crossed the border into the Turkish occupied part of Cyprus yet. So it was, the experience was very raw and the feelings were very raw with respect to what happened to Cyprus. And I think that it was a process for me to be with Turks, knowing what they had done to us. And in that process, I was able to kind of reason out this as um, the Turkish people themselves are not responsible for the atrocities that the
Turkish
Turks had done,
government
the
did.
Turkish government had done to Cyprus,
Yeah.
and the killings and the destruction that they brought about. So I began to see the Turkish people more as human beings like us instead of an enemy.
Mm.
So that helped me a lot in the process of my finding peace. And you cannot really find forgiveness until you find peace. So forgiveness is something that God gives as a gift eventually as your heart finds peace. And I
Mm.
think the trip to Turkey was a milestone in that process for me of finding peace that leads to forgiveness.
Mm.
And forgiveness for me does not mean that I will forget what happened. I lived it. It's still raw in my mind and my heart.
Right.
But I have no hatred for Turks, for example. I have no anger against the Turks for what happened in Cyprus. Um, I do get anger against the Turkish policies and Turkish
Sure.
government in some way. But if I met a Turk today or any time, I will love them. I will feel like if he was kind to me, I would say he's a friend. I mean,
Yeah, of
we can
course.
be
With
friends.
anybody. Yeah, with anybody.
And
It's
I
like
told
that.
you I had Turkish boys that we
They
were
were your
friends
friends, yeah.
during middle school, high school. So for me, it was like going to Turkey and meeting Turks. It was like going back to my childhood years of having Turkish friends.
Hmm.
Because when you're with, especially the guide and others too, when you're with people for a long time, the bus driver was very kind. He didn't speak in English, but he was very kind to us too.
Yeah.
And so the process of finding peace began with the trip to Turkey. The exposure to others was very good.
Hmm.
To the Turks was very good in that sense of helping me to find peace with them, with the people.
Hmm.
So I have no ill will in me against Turkish people. I have no anger against them. I have no
Hmm.
desire to take revenge or anything like that. I'm very peaceful with regard to the people.
Yeah.
I'm not happy when I see what their government is doing. And I know that most of them don't even know or understand what their government is doing. Even if there are some people who agree, I think most of the people are peaceful people like the
Yeah.
rest of us.
Yeah.
And they go about their own business and they want to take care of their families
Right.
and they don't want to do harm to anyone.
Mm-hmm.
There must be fanatics too. We know there are fanatics
Sure.
too, but I didn't meet any fanatics, so I
That's
cannot
good.
really.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
good. Okay. Well, I mean, I wasn't expecting anything like, yep, now everything's forgiven and we're fine. I wasn't expecting it. I think this is much more difficult than
Well,
something like that.
I think that going to the occupied part of Cyprus in 2003 or four, I don't remember the first time.
When you went by yourself, right?
Well, I went with a group again, a similar
Oh
group.
yeah, but not with us. You
Not
went
with
with
you.
us later.
Yeah, I went with
Yeah.
you later. But the first time I went was with a group from Canada again, the
Right.
students from the same group,
Hmm.
the same university. Not the same students, but students from the same university.
Yeah.
And the professor and we went to my hometown. We went to the church where I grew up. We went to the cemetery, and of course, my heart was broken again.
Yeah.
Far worse than going through Turkey because
Hmm.
now I was on familiar ground. I
Yeah.
looked for the homes of those that I knew.
Yeah.
Most of them are destroyed, leveled off. The church has been destroyed. The graves of my grandparents and others that I knew were smashed
Mm-hmm.
and the marble pieces were thrown into a pile
Yeah.
with the marble crosses. So that really was heartbreaking for me. And but again, we had um like a Turkish Cypriot guide who was very kind
Mm-hmm.
and he was a very calming presence.
Aw.
And he kind of cried with us in a way when we
Yeah.
looked at all of
They
that.
suffered too. Yeah.
Yeah, and the Turkish Cypriots suffered from all of this too,
Mm-hmm.
and they were not approving. They're not approving of any of the destruction and any of the hatred that was shown
Right.
by whoever shown the hatred. And they so over time, going through Turkey, coming back, going and visiting, and finding finding or seeing in person, touching the rocks and touching the things that were destroyed, um, in a way brought me into the reality of what really happened and help me to come to peace with what happened.
Hmm.
I am not putting it behind me. This is always going to be in my mind.
Yeah.
But I think in my heart, I again concluded one more time that whoever does things like that is a dehumanized person who brings destruction and kills and does harm.
Yeah.
And that um, may God have mercy on them and may God forgive them because I don't even know where to start. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I have found more peace with this in the sense of not wanting to take revenge, not to, like soon after we left, I want to go back and fight them and do whatever. I don't have any of that
Soon after we
in me
left, what do
anymore.
you
Yeah.
mean? Soon after we left?
In 1974,
When
when
it
we left our
happened.
homes. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Of course.
This
Well, it
happened.
was fresh then. It was like very fresh
Yeah,
then, and
yeah. But
it had
that,
just happened.
yeah. I have more peace with that, and I understand that we're in the hands of God. Whatever happens, happens. Somehow God allowed this, which changed our lives. But then again, many of us have come to God through the process. So I think that in the grand scheme of things, in God's providence, even the evil things that happen to us can be turned into good if we turn our hearts to God. So that's the way I look at this, and I find peace in that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is kind of a silly question. I know the answer to it, but I wonder if anybody else has the same question. Obviously, when all of that happened in 74 and even later in years, because I've heard this question before, I don't think anything about mental health was ever brought up in your life in the sense of like, you should go to therapy for that or anything like that. You found a lot of comfort in praying and kind of being with your family and yeah, you did. It's not you didn't, and not that I don't advocate for therapy, obviously, but you didn't go to therapy, and you found peace in a different way.
Yes, I never went to therapy. I don't know that anybody in those days understood therapy as we understand today.
Yeah.
I don't think that there were any people in Cyprus that could actually offer therapy.
Yeah.
And offer therapy to 200,000
People.
refugees.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nobody even suggested such a thing.
Okay.
I think I was depressed for a couple of years, the first couple of years after the invasion. I was depressed to a certain level. I saw that, I knew that, I understood that.
Okay.
I walked around like a zombie the first year, especially on the grounds of the school in Leucosia. And nobody there even asked us, how we're feeling or what was happening to us or whatever. And nobody, I don't think they had the tools or the understanding
or the resources to do anything
like that. Do anything about it.
Yeah.
My grades suffered at the English school. My grades suffered during the last 2 years. I was doing my A levels. I think my grades suffered. I could have gotten A's. I got B's instead.
Yeah.
So that was a repercussion of the invasion on me, a personal repercussion in that direct way, on my studies and my learning. And after that, I came to the United States. Well, I went into the military, of course, those 2 years, different years. But after that, I came to the United States and I immersed myself in working and studying. And, there was no time to think about anything else.
Yeah.
I stayed away from demonstrations, political demonstrations against Turkey or anything like that. I just didn't want to even think about it. The way for me to find healing was to kind of stay away from it. And then I was surrendered to God in a way over and over again because my heart was broken for so many years. And
right.
But then still is in some way,
of course.
I'm not fully healed in that way. And I never will be because
I was going to say, I don't think there is a fullness of healing necessarily in this process. But I mean, so it's like during that time, there was a lot of avoiding those things so you wouldn't think about it, which is totally normal. But then, I mean, when you went back to Cyprus and you went to Turkey, there was no avoiding.
Yes, I confronted it.
You confronted it then, and you made the decision to confront it.
Yes,
really.
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So that
I made the decision to confront it, and that is what helped me to kind of move forward and get past the anger and get past the whatever else emotions may have been, which were more heightened, and kind of find more peace. So if I think of it today, I have more peace about it, about what happened, and I kind of feel the presence of God in everything, even in the adversities that happened.
Yeah.
Okay? And that's the way I'm looking at it.
Mm-hmm.
As I said, I will never forget it. It's always in my mind.
Of course, yeah. Well,
but I don't think about it on a daily basis. I'm,
right.
only when I'm reminded. And
yeah.
Yeah, I think the most difficult thing for me today to look at is what the Turkish government is doing today. Basically reinvading the waters of Cyprus, trying to take away resources that were discovered of
to this day, like
natural
this
gas.
This is happening right now.
It's happening right now, and there is an uproar in Europe against them. The Greek government, the Cypriot government, is filing complaints against them. The European Court, in the European Union, in the United Nations, and nobody's listening. So that to me is more concerning today about the aggressive behavior of Turkey. I have more concern about that than anything else.
Yeah.
Well,
obviously you found peace. You're finding peace. I think that's a constant process. But what's happening in current times does not help the situation and doesn't help the way we feel about it. Yeah. And it is upsetting to witness for all of us. I think, obviously, not even just for Cypriots, for Greeks, for people in Europe, it's upsetting. It's upsetting to see what's going on. But the point is to find a way to heal and to go through that process of healing. Yeah. And that's what you're doing and you've been doing. And I think you've done a pretty good job.
Well, with God's grace, I always, and more so now, and since I became a priest, I surrender these to the hands of God. Every time I am disturbed by anything, I surrender it to the hands of God. I see what the Turkish government is doing today, violating and challenging the Greeks and kind of challenging them to shoot at their boats and shoot at their planes that are violating airspace and violating the Greek waters, and they're actually provoking. Yeah, they're provoking for war, and I'm worried about that. And again, what I do is I surrender it to God and I say, Lord, have mercy on your people, protect us, protect the people that are affected by this, and don't allow this to go any further, because there's something crazy behind wanting war. There's something very crazy and evil. About wanting war, and I
agree.
And I feel for the people that will be
in the middle of that, who will suffer.
Crossfire.
Yeah. Well, I guess we will end it here. If we feel like doing another episode at any time, we will. So this won't be the total end, but it will be, technically it's the last episode of our season, of our talk about this. But we may come back and discuss things if we feel like it, or if you guys have questions. But thanks for listening, everybody, and hopefully we'll continue this process and you guys keep telling your friends and sharing the story. I think it's really important for people to know what happened and what's happening now, to kind of get away from our own bubble of safety, to kind of know what's happening. And thanks, Ba, for telling us your story.
You're welcome, Olympia, and thank you to the people listening to this.
Yeah.
I don't know what the contribution is exactly, but whatever it is, I would say that for me, in the end, the world is difficult, because there are difficult powers and forces that are functioning in the world which affect us, and we need to turn our lives to God to find the comfort and peace and the strength to get through the difficulties, and that's about it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks everybody, and we'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.